All right. Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate. And yeah, I mean, this morning, I talked about the great things of genomics, and we definitely in the dairy we have seen that amazing revolution, I would say, in terms of impact, faster genetic progress, double 2.5 times the before genomics. But I haven't talked about the bad side of genomics. So hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. So again, genomic selection was introduced in 2009, and we've seen massive changes in our industry. And of course, we've been able to target expensive traits and apply novel technologies in a much more efficient way. Usage of young bulls it's now around 70% in dairy in Holstein, which is quite a large percentage. The AI chooses only AI young genomic bulls as sire or son, young heifer as stem of sire. So the speed of the uptake of this genomic in the dairy industry has been massive. And as I mentioned earlier on today, really allow us to, go in classic production conformation, a little bit of fertility to broaden quite extensively our selection goal and being able to still achieve and deliver genetic progress for all traits of interest with much faster genetic progress than we used to have before genomics. And however, there are some negative consequences as we are using such a faster rate of young bulls, young heifers. All at once we have on the ground a great grand and kids of sires that have been spread without knowing the full consequence of that. So there are most of the time fabulous genes coming out of the sire, but once in a while we get not so good genes. And we can only see when those deleterious haplotypes or genes come out with a possible death of the animal or some strange malformation in the calves and so on. So this is an issue that it's quite important for the dairy industry. It's something that we need to always keep a close eye, and inbreeding is a good tool to monitor on this, but is likely obviously not the only tool. Just basic genomics here, so that we are on the same page. We have a group of animals where we measure the phenotype, and we have been able to do this not just on massive number of herds, but I can do now on smaller number of herds, even research herds. We genotype these animals. We are able to estimate these values of genetic markers, and then we can select our candidates as soon as they're born and we have their genotype. And then, of course, there is the environment, which is pretty much what we give as feed to the animal, how we manage that farm, that animal, and how is his health, and so on. So we've seen massive increase of rates of genetic gain. We've seen increased accuracy in Canada. Pretty much the difference between a parent average, so the average of the sire and dam for the young animal newly born, let's say, is around between 30 and 40 points of reliability for that PAs. Once we genotype the animal, that we have a double reliability, so we get between 70 to 80 points of reliability, and this for every traits that we do in Canada. Pretty much, we have a double of reliability of our. So that's, of course, allow much more confidence in selecting these young animals. Reduced generation interval, we're going to see that in a second. And really, we can, all at once, which is lovely for a scientist and researcher like myself, to focus on traits that we couldn't touch before, like feed efficiency, like methane emission, like even some health traits as well, and new fertility traits closer to biology. The genomics has been also very helpful for us to, have a much better accurate parentage verification of our animals and maintaining hair book integrity, and then being very, very important to discovery of recessives, haplotypes. We estimate in Canada, which is, remember, is 1/10 of the dairy national herd in US, so we're around 1 million cows, US around 9 to 10 million. The cumulative benefits of genomic selection is around 720 million per year. As we look at these fabulous benefits, we also seen homozygosity, inbreeding, that has been increasing at a very, very fast rate. And we've seen higher occurrences of homozygosis recessive, and we have plenty of those. And some just published a couple of weeks ago. Then we also saw more, more hidden effect of inbreeding, which is what we call this inbreeding depression. So the decrease of phenotypic mean for milk production, for fertility, survival, and so on. The problem is we really don't know where we're going in a sense. So we know we're doing faster, we're selecting for increased presence of good genes, but at the same time, once in a while, we have bad genes. So we don't know what is the full impact of this. There has been some studies out of US from my colleague John Cole that tried to put a cost to this effect of inbreeding and the increase of homozygosity, and was around $11 million. So you can see it's a problem, but it's costly, but in comparison to what we achieve with the genomic is offset way much from the gains. But we still have to consider the issue, and can we do something about it? This just shows the generation interval for the classic 4 pathways in dairy. So the side of bulls, side of dams, demo bulls, and demo cows. And you can see how since 2009, the big drop in age. I was talking about earlier that AI now use only young genomic bulls as a son, only young heifers. We even genotype the embryo. So we have a flash, I don't know, of, let's say 10 embryos. They are all full sieves. Once we used to implant all these 10 embryos. Now we can genotype the embryos and say, well, this time maybe we're only going to implant 3 of those that have the right combination of genes that we want. So the acceleration and the decrease of generation interval has been very, very strong, and is really what the main cause of this faster genetic progress. Now, this is trends of inbreeding in 4 Canadian breeds. Holstein represent 92% of our national herd, Ayrshire and Jersey 2% each, and then Brown is much smaller, but still quite important. And the red line is the Holstein, and the absolute value of inbreeding is relevant until a certain point, because it very much depends how deep is your pedigree, okay? So if you have a pedigree going back to Johann Pabst, the very first cow in 1880s that really created our full North American herd in a sense, we will have different level of inbreeding. So what is important, at least, is the rate of that inbreeding. So those numbers you see on the top, with this inbreeding rate for 10 years of around 7% between 70 and in the 70s, 0.10 in the 80s. Then starts genetic evaluation of the animal model in the 90s that accelerated a level of accuracy of selecting our animals, and usage of bulls that all at once, a single bull can have 3,500 sons. And so huge increase of our relationship in our almost global herd, but for sure our North American herd. But then we start saying, well, we do need to do something. So that's when we started doing mating plans to try to get to not do matings that creates inbreeding over 6.5%, for example. This worked out for a bit, and then you can see in the early 2000s, we were able to slow down that and then start genomic. And we accelerate again. And we are pretty much on the same rate of inbreeding rate of the 90s. So, and you can see it's going way up. Now, the great things with genomics is now we have a little bit more information, right? Inbreeding is, the pedigree inbreeding is what we expect when we mate two animals, right? Is the half the relationship between the two animals. But that's just an expected value. Genomic inbreeding provides us information to be a little bit more accurate on what is actually the realized inbreeding, or the realized homozygosity at least. So, and it's, of course, will be depending on the fact that we don't have all our population genotype, but we start to have a good percentage of our population which is genotype. In Canada now we're around 20% of the females are genotype. So this is just an example. We have two half sibs. So we have a common ancestor at the top. We have two half sibs. So relation between them will be 25%, and the pedigree inbreeding will be 12.5%. This is animal breeding 101. But then we can look, see, this is what we calculate from the pedigree inbreeding. If we have the genomic information, which in this case we do have, or at least we have three examples, one which is exactly the expected equal to the realized, which is 12.5 in this, and you can see that red allele that is in common between the two sides. Then we could have as high as 25%, for example, in which the realized homozygosity is much higher than what we expected, for example, or the great Mendelian sampling, great recombination, we only get 0%, for example. So we can do, with genomic information, we can really do much better job in measuring the level, the actual level of inbreeding. Now, let's look a little bit what at the different perspective. At the industry level, the producer will say, oh, I do everything I can to avoid inbreeding at all costs. And I don't like to see increase in inbreeding, but what can I do? They're all related, my bulls, my dams, and so on. Then somebody say, oh, what the heck, status quo. If I'm broke, don't fix it, let's keep on going. There has been some articles, this is a little bit less than the meta side, but say, well, you know, how large is your genetic pool and the gene pool? And this was a sentence from a Wall Street Journal. Gene pool is about as deep as a pie plate, so not much. No, the effective population size of the Holstein breed, in spite of being a global breed across all countries, is quite small, between 50 and 100, which is very small. Then, of course, there is the scientist, the academic perspective. They say, okay, we know with direction selected, we have done a great job, and this pretty much offset what we're seeing in the inbreeding accumulation and the effects of inbreeding. So we are fixing good genes. Yes, there are some big genes we don't know, but I think we're okay with it. So the reality is inbreeding is there, is unavoidable, is unavoidable when we do this strong selection, which we are doing with genomic selection, of course. So can we at least monitor and trying to slow down the accumulation of inbreeding? Because the one important thing to know is always the fact that when it's close inbreeding and recent inbreeding, that's the most deleterious one. If it's breeding that is accumulated over 50 years, that's fine. But if we are looking at breeding just happening in the last couple of generations, that's the one that is most lethal, because it's not been able to purge yet from our selection. So why care? We are saying that the population are becoming less diverse, more related to each other. Possible the fitness decreases, even I haven't seen yet too many elements of that, apart from, of course, the appearance of this lethal recessive. But then also this longer term view of saying, okay, we are seeing this lower gene diversity. How much can we keep on going, still accumulating this homozygosity? And we know that a more homozygous animal will be less robust to change in environment. So this may, especially with the way we are going, this may affect our long-term survival of our herd. So we've seen average inbreeding increasing across all breeds. The most important point is also that we cannot find outcross sire. So let's talk about that a little bit. There are two important decision points for maintaining genetic diversity. And this is where it's difficult to start one of those and who starts first or not. On one side, the breeding organization, and on the other side is the producer that chooses which bull to select to mate to which female. There has been plenty of literature on this, optimal contribution selection, which pretty much trying to discount animals that are more related to your population and trying to decrease their EBVs in an optimal way, but very rarely used, both in a national organization, but also from the breeding organization as well. Why? Because we all wanted, there is high competition among breeding organizations. There are top bulls that needs to be, there are sales that needs to be done and so on. Outcrosses, yeah, great idea, but generally are not very popular. They are not very high in merit. That's the problem. Crossbreeding dairy, especially in Canada, not a reality, very, very little niche, I would say. In US, a little bit more. In Canada, we tend to have much smaller herds than US, so more family-run herds, especially 50% of our herds are in Quebec, and 25–30% are in Ontario. As you move west, you tend to have larger herds and freestall and so on, but east, it tends to be more tie stall still, family-run, 50 to 60, 80 animals per farm. What tools do we have? So reluctantly, we have an inbreeding calculator, which tries to be independent of which AI bull and so on, and trying to say, okay, this is, we have the pedigree, we have the pedigree of your female, of the sires. You know, if you mate this animal with this sire, you're going to get this inbreeding. Great. And that can help a little bit. But really maintain the current inbreeding, doesn't do anything about it. Then we created this R value, which is a relationship value, and really represent the percentage of DNA, let's say, that the bull is in common with our active cow population. So we can estimate what are the active population, meaning the cows that are still in the herd, lactating and so on, the bulls that are actively sold by AI centers, and we can calculate an R value for each of the bull. But this is across all Canada. And we cannot find any outcross, even there. Why? Because our population is so related to each other, right? So there is very little advantage for the breeding companies to buy some of these outcross, because unfortunately these outcross will come also with a lower genetic potential in comparison with the normal non-outcross bulls. So there is very poor demand for these bulls. So this is a group of outcross, group of our young genomic bulls by LPI. So the best bulls that we're going to be on your right, up to 4,000 points of LPI. And then as you go on the left, those are the lower merit bulls. In blue, with this, the bigger, most of them, with a relation value greater than 17, which is quite high. And then those with, which we call it outcross, with a relation value lower than 17. But you can see that it's more center on 3,000 points of LPI, very few, by the way, and tend to go more on the left side of our tail, which is not good. So not great genetic merit for these outcross bulls. So then we need to shift gear, obviously, because these are values based on the national herd. But what if I look at my herd, which females do I have today, which bulls are less related, which bulls are actively now used and sold by AI that are less related to my cows? I don't care about the national herd. What about my cows? Can I find those? So we're looking at building a within herd relationship value so that the producer can, especially if it does genomic tests, we can do a genomic value, which would be even more accurate, and can say, yeah, okay, of these bulls that are actively, this bull tends to be a little bit, it's not going to be a fantastic solution, but will help a little bit more than an average R value with across the population. Now, this will need to be done will need to be changed over time, because of course the bulls that is outcrossed today will not be outcrossed next year, and so on. But at least we'll give some new knowledge to each producer to identify outcross bulls for their own specific farm. So that's what we are working as we speak right now at Lactanet. To do this, we use already a tool that we have developed together with Austin, Canada, which is called Compass. It's a genetic management software, which is freely available to all the Canadian producer. It's online. Each producer can log into to their own page. And of course, it works better for those that are in milk recording. And pretty much there is all the full inventory of their animals in this page. And the idea is to expand this tool to also include this R value. So just some example. We have in this Compass, we tend to have a bull list, which includes all genomic tested, the foreign bulls, the proven bulls, and you can maintain a My Bulls list for your own farm, for example. And this is a nice tool that you can also look for deleterious haplotype that you don't want to, they want to be free, they don't want to any heterozygous bull that have these type of things, or they have even more, or they are A2 homozygous, for example, which tends to be a trendy thing as well for certain producer. So we could add to that list to say, okay, these are, within this My Bull, there is also these bulls that are actually less related to my bull, my herd. So that's what we're going to add a section to this My Bull list, which will have hopefully produce up to 5 to 10 candidates. And this list will change over time, obviously. And will allow, you can sort whatever index you want, and you can do your own customized index and so on. And then you can select and do the matings later on whenever you want. So this is one aspect, but there is the second phase. So what about, are the AI going to do anything to create more outcross bulls? And I always say, who starts first, right? So we decided to start with the farmers, with the producer, because if the producer starts seeing the usefulness and the value of this one, they may say, hey, AI number 2, none of your bulls are really outcrossed with my farm. So there is hopefully going to be a push to AI to start working on that aspect as well. So that's our hope, of course. So this just repeat what we were saying before. One important aspect of genomics, as I said earlier, is that we have been very helped in trying to discover all these genetic recesses. But we're still seeing higher occurrences of those. The problem is sometimes these occurrences happen, but by the time we've seen it, the bad genes have been spread out. So we do need some kind of early monitoring tool at the farm level. They say, hey, I got this strange calf born. Take a picture, maybe take a sample. We need to sequence that animal, sequence the sire probably already sequenced, the dam. They start doing some discovery. Now, of course, not with one animal. You need to have more than one animal to be able to do this. But that's one thing we're also working on it, to create a pipeline to do this early monitoring. Because the most embarrassing thing is when you get an article from France, they say, hey, we found this malformation. Oh, it goes back to this pool of yours. And that's not good. And that's exactly what I'm saying there. So we're moving towards using more genomics as the genomic testing is starting to be more used by our producers. And once we know the genomic both the sire and the dam and so on, we can really have a much more accurate estimate of the homozygosity on the progeny. And let's always remember, inbreeding is bad, but there are inbreeding. We do inbreeding because at the end we are actually increasing the higher occurrences of good genes as well. So if we can, genomics can help in getting rid of the bad side of the inbreeding, that we can, kind of a win-win situation. So we are thinking about including genome information where possible for more accurate measurement of relatedness among all our animals. Trying to provide a herd customized tool for producers to see which bulls are least related to their own herd. Trying to push the AI to work on this area as well, develop other tools to help the AI, the breeding organization, to identify outcross bulls, more diverse bull sires. The early monitoring tool is going to be a key. This is going to be very important for us because you get one of those calf malformation, those calf, it's going to go on the media. That's not going to be fantastic news for all of us. And it is a result of our selection. So let's not hide that. That's happening. Not many times, thank God, but it is happening. Research, of course. As a researcher, I love to continue research to better understand not just these occurrences, but also the biological reason of those and the impacts of homozygosity. So this is come from a friend at Gregor Gorianch, and you have a genetic diversity on one side, genetic gain on another. The green, of course, the top usual our right quarter, top right quarter is the ideal, so that you have strong genetic gain and strong genetic diversity. Then there you have strong genetic gain, but very risky and not much genetic diversity. You have a lot of genetic diversity, but not much gain, and that's, you have a stable kind of progress. And then he calls it stupid, like that, but that's okay. And, that's when you have no genetic gain and no diversity, which hopefully is not happening. So the idea is to try to be on the top right corner. So this is the fact that the inbreeding increases is happening. We cannot do anything about it. And we still don't know some of the consequences. We are only seeing the more visible ones. And we're trying to balance the genetic gain with increases in breeding levels by selecting more outcross bulls. Gene testing, that's going to help a lot as we're moving more and more farmers to use genomic testing, genotype our females, and trying to get more realized level of inbreeding and not just expected through the pedigree. And then, of course, we can continue to do our strong genomic selection for production, for a balanced goal, which is production, reproduction, health, and welfare, and survival. So who needs the first move? We have these two critical points affecting diversity. What bulls our breeding organization will purchase? What semen do the farmers will buy? So it goes back to chicken and egg. We're starting with the chicken, hopefully, but we're hoping that the AI will follow as well.